There are brands in your closet right now that no longer exist. The company went bankrupt, the name got sold, and someone new kept putting that label on completely different clothes. You kept buying. Nobody told you. This video is about 8 of them, and by the end, you will understand why the label on your tag means absolutely nothing anymore. In 1976, Liz Claiborne launched her namesake brand with just $300,000 and a simple mission. She saw millions of women entering the professional workforce, trapped between boxy, masculine suits and impractical, pretty clothes. She designed a solution: professional, feminine clothing built for a real woman's full day. It was high-quality sportswear that transitioned easily from the morning meeting to an evening out, offered at prices middle-class families could actually afford. The formula was a massive success. By 1986, Liz Claiborne became the first woman-founded company to join the Fortune 500, crossing $1 billion in annual revenue. Department stores allocated dedicated floor space to the brand, physical proof of its cultural scale. The label carried a promise of quality and fit that you could rely on every single morning. But the connection between the creator and the clothes fractured. Claiborne stepped down in 1989 and passed away in 2007. Just 4 years later, facing mounting debt, the corporate owners made a decision that severed the legacy from the label entirely. In 2011, they sold the Liz Claiborne name to JCPenney for $268 million, renaming the original company. Today, the founder's name hangs next to budget basics on discount racks. There is no independent design studio, no runway presence, and no Liz Claiborne behind the fabric. The name survived. The standard did not. In the 1980s and the 1990s, the default office pump across America came from one brand, Nine West. Jerome Fisher and Vince Camuto built a retail empire by bringing runway footwear trends to the mass market at affordable prices. By the mid-1990s, Nine West secured its place as the #1 women's shoe brand in American department stores. It was an era of retail dominance driven by steady, repeat purchases and consumer trust. This was not a collapse caused by women suddenly rejecting the shoes. The consumer demand was still there, but the corporate foundation was hollowed out by financial engineering. A leveraged buyout loaded the parent company with over $2 billion in debt. The business could not survive the interest payments. In 2018, Nine West filed for bankruptcy, burying the company under $1.6 billion in liabilities. To pay off creditors, the business was dismantled and its most valuable asset was sold off. That asset was not a shoe, a factory, or a design studio. It was a trademark. At auction, the Nine West name sold for $340 million. Remember that name? Authentic Brands Group. This brand management giant does not manufacture shoes. Instead, they license the trademark to third-party factories and retailers. Today, Nine West exists purely as a rented label stamped on synthetic polyurethane. The structural connection to the original craftsmanship is completely gone. The pumps may look the same, but they will not last the same. In 1953, Laura and Bernard Ashley started printing headscarves on their kitchen table in a tiny London flat. They had exactly 10 pounds, some linen, and a homemade silk screen. That 10-pound investment built a sprawling romantic empire. By the 1970s, Laura Ashley created a global lifestyle brand long before corporate marketers even coined the term. At its peak, the brand operated more than 500 stores worldwide. Women wore the signature prairie dresses, Victorian blouses, and English floral prints as a rejection of modern, sterile industrial life. The company successfully wrapped entire homes in a single aesthetic, matching the drapes to the wallpaper and the bedding to the dresses. But the entire empire depended on a single creative heart. On September 7, 1985, on her 60th birthday, Laura Ashley fell down a flight of stairs. She died 10 days later. Without its founder, the brand spent decades drifting through identity crises, overexpansion, and revolving management. The cohesive vision dissolved. In March 2020, the physical retail business collapsed into administration, permanently closing every store. The buyer was Gordon Brothers, a firm of asset managers, not fashion designers. They stripped the name from its retail roots, converting the legacy into a licensed trademark portfolio. Today, the name survives, but you will find it printed on licensed manufactured bedding and wallpaper rather than original structured fashion. The wallpaper remembers the aesthetic. The wardrobe does not. In 1984, Dennis and Ann Pence sat at a kitchen table in Sandpoint, Idaho, and launched a mail-order catalog. They targeted an audience the rest of the fashion industry ignored. Women over 40 who wanted classic, practical clothes without dressing like their daughters. Coldwater Creek built its reputation on linen jackets, soft cotton knits, and a reliable, real body fit. These were loyal shoppers who bought the same styles year after year, trusting the brand to deliver natural fibers instead of synthetic trends. It was comfortable, practical, and immensely successful. By 2006, the brand peaked with 350 physical stores, 7,000 employees, and over $1 billion in annual revenue. But the retail environment changed faster than the catalog could print. As internet shopping disrupted traditional mail order and physical storefronts, Coldwater Creek could not keep up. The company posted no annual profit after 2006. In April 2014, buried under $361 million in liabilities, the brand filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and closed every single store. The physical assets and sourcing channels were sold to a Hong Kong-based procurement company, reducing the legacy to an asset-light digital trademark. Today, Coldwater Creek exists only as an e-commerce platform. The catalog may now have your email instead of your mailbox, but the product behind it is different. The signature cotton and linen have been largely replaced by cheap synthetic polyester. The original fit system is gone. The label survives, but the original identity has vanished. These first four brands share a single, hidden reality. Their original companies died, but their names were kept alive as corporate shells. This is the anatomy of a zombie brand, a trademark that survives long after the designers, factories, and standards that built its reputation have been entirely swept away. When a fashion house goes bankrupt, the physical business is dismantled, but the name is sold at auction as a raw asset. A licensing conglomerate or private equity firm buys the label, strips away the original supply chain, and slaps the trusted logo onto garments made by the cheapest third-party manufacturers. You can spot these imposters using 3 simple checks. First, search the brand name online alongside the words owner or parent company. If names like Authentic Brands Group, Sycamore Partners, or other private equity firms appear, you are no longer buying from the original source. Second, ignore the name and trust your hands. Feel the fabric. If a linen blazer or a cotton jacket feels thin, light, stiff, or unnaturally plastic, the original materials have been replaced by cheap polyester or synthetic blends. Third, check the shipping origin. Legacy brands spent decades building specialized, consistent supply chains. Licensing houses simply swap factories to whichever manufacturer bids the lowest, frequently changing where your clothes are made. The label on the collar will not tell you any of this. You have to look past the tag to find the truth, and the next 4 brands make this corporate strategy even clearer. In 1920, outdoorsman Eddie Bauer nearly froze to death on a winter fishing trip in Washington state. That brush with hypothermia sparked a lifelong obsession with survival gear, leading to his 1936 creation of the Skyliner, the first patented quilted goose-down jacket in America. For decades, the brand was synonymous with rugged utility, eventually expanding to over 220 stores across the United States and Canada. But modern corporate owners had no interest in legacy craftsmanship. They wanted the equity of the name. On February 9, 2026, the retail operating entity filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. When the scheduled auction drew 0 qualified bids, The brick-and-mortar chain collapsed into full liquidation, forcing 175 permanent store closures. This was not a simple retail failure. It was a calculated corporate extraction. Before the bankruptcy filing ever hit the courts, Authentic Brands Group already owned the Eddie Bauer trademark. Weeks before the retail stores were abandoned to die, the highly profitable e-commerce and wholesale licenses were quietly stripped away and transferred to an entity called Outdoor 5. The physical stores, burdened with leases and overhead, were left to liquidate. The digital storefront, completely detached from the original retail business, was kept perfectly alive. Today, you can still buy an Eddie Bauer jacket online, but the historical standards of the Seattle outfitter are gone. The transaction goes to Outdoor 5, the brand belongs to a licensing conglomerate, and the physical legacy has been systematically erased. In 1954, a single shop opened inside the Hotel Taft in New Haven, Connecticut. The founder, Richard Liebeskind, named it after a best-selling dress pattern, and paired with Taylor to evoke high-quality tailoring. For the next 50 years, that name defined the wardrobe of the American professional woman. Ann Taylor did more than sell power suits, structured blazers, and sharp pencil skirts. It sold belonging. It was the trusted armor for women stepping into law firms, boardrooms, and corner offices, eventually growing into a retail empire of over 1,000 stores. But the connection between craftsmanship and the customer dissolved when the brand became a tool for corporate expansion. The parent company, Ascena Retail Group, went on an aggressive acquisition spree, loading the business with more than $1.3 billion in debt. When the pandemic hit, this massive debt burden dragged the company into an August 2020 bankruptcy filing. Private equity firm Sycamore Partners bought the wreckage. Under this new ownership, the historic fashion house was treated as a financial asset, not a creative legacy. To increase margins, the focus shifted toward loft, while the structured suiting that built the brand's reputation was systematically thinned out. Sturdy wool blends and crisp linens were replaced by cheap, lightweight polyester. A classic 2005 linen blazer was designed for drape and breathability. Today's equivalent is a polyester mix designed for a balance sheet. If you buy an Ann Taylor blazer today, you are no longer buying the fabric of professional advancement. You are buying a synthetic copy of it. In 1970, Jones, New York was founded on a simple promise: dependable, high-quality apparel without unnecessary flash. It became the ultimate department store staple, the reliable option for looking put together without having to overthink the wardrobe. It was not about high-fashion drama. It was about quiet, everyday trust. That trust built an empire, eventually pushing annual revenues past the $1 billion mark. But the business was dismantled by financial engineering. In 2013, private equity firm Sycamore Partners purchased the parent company for $1.2 billion. They did not keep it whole. Instead, they carved the corporate structure into pieces. Highly profitable assets like Nine West and Stuart Weitzman were stripped away and separated. Jones, New York was left to fend for itself. The decline was rapid. By 2015, every single retail store was permanently closed. The design studios were shuttered. The factories were abandoned. The business was dead, but the trademark still had value. In 2023, Authentic Brands Group bought the name. Today, you can still find the Jones, New York label stitched into clothing on the racks of off-price discount retailers. But the company that once understood the fit, fabric, and daily needs of its customer is completely gone. When you pull a Jones, New York blazer off the rack today, you are looking at an empty shell. The label survived. The company did not. In 1962, Rosalind Jaffe and her husband Elliot took a $5,000 investment and opened a modest shop in Stamford, Connecticut. The concept had zero pretension: quality career wear for working women at reasonable prices. This was the territory of the teacher, the nurse, and the receptionist running in during a quick lunch break to find a reliable dress for Friday night. For 57 years, that simple formula worked, eventually growing to a peak of 650 stores nationwide. But the business fell victim to the same corporate forces that dismantled so many others. In 2019, parent company Ascena Retail Group announced it was shutting down every single Dressbarn location. This was the very same corporate parent whose massive debt-heavy acquisitions would later push Ann Taylor into bankruptcy court. The physical stores were liquidated, the employees let go, and the real estate abandoned. But the name was sold to an online investment venture, which quickly relaunched it as a digital storefront. This transition shows the stark contrast between a physical legacy and a digital afterlife. Rosalind Jaffe built her business around the daily needs of real women who wanted to look professional without overpaying. It was a brand defined by the fitting room, designed for real bodies. Today, that human connection has been replaced by a checkout button on a screen. The website does not know your name, it does not understand your fit, and the fabric behind the label has no connection to the standards of the company that earned your trust. Today, the label in your collar is no longer a promise. It is a rented logo, a ghost of a company that died years ago. When legacy is traded for licensing, a trusted name becomes just a costume. The next time you shop, look past the logo to the stitch. What are you actually paying for? Share your thoughts in the comments below.